Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here, coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about my PlayStation 5 experience up until this point. For those of you that are not aware, my PlayStation unit was provided to me by PlayStation Portugal so that I could give it a look, tell you guys my opinions on it, check out some of the new games like Demon Souls, Godfall, Miles Morales, and tell you guys about these games, and naturally check out all of the upcoming games that are going to come to the console, like the next Horizon Zero Dawn, the next God of War, and so on and so forth. Now, I've been meaning to make this video for a while, but I delayed it on account of the fact that I wanted to test some external storage on the unit, because I've heard a lot of conflicting reports with external storage, stuff that quite simply didn't make a lot of sense to me, people saying that it flat out didn't work, or quite simply you weren't able to copy games from the base hard drive into the external hard drive, and just like all kinds of conflicting reports. So I had to test this for myself, and we'll talk more about the storage, but I wanted to start this video by talking about the form factor of the console, because it's one of the first things that kind of strikes you when you initially see a PlayStation 5 is just how big it is. And yes, it is pretty big, and you can clearly see by the design of the console that it's designed to be in an upright position, which is also kind of like a departure from what we had with the PlayStation 4, which could be placed in an upright position. It would function just fine, either upright position or in the horizontal position. But I feel like one of the reasons why the PlayStation 5 is more designed around the upright position is because it diminishes the surface area that is actually touching the table. I feel like probably the engineers over at Sony noticed that one of the reasons the PS4s were heating up as much as they were is because there was a lot more surface area close to a table or whatever you happen to have your console on. It would usually heat up a lot. Like if you ever picked up your console after a long gaming session and moved it to a different location, you'll notice that the table underneath, or I don't know where you would put your console other than the table, but if you notice the surface where you had your console in, that surface is going to be running, I mean the surface is not running, but the surface is going to be pretty hot, and the console itself is going to be pretty hot. So being on a hot surface, because the console heated up the surface and the heat just kept generating, being on that hot surface is not really going to help the functioning of your PlayStation, and that is probably also one of the causes of why you had so many complaints that the PlayStation 4 sounded like a friggin' airplane. So I feel like that's one of the reasons they designed it like this. Now, I have played with my PlayStation 5 both in the upright position and in the horizontal position. I haven't noticed a significant difference in temperature, but I've just taken to having it on the vertical position because it just feels like the airflow is going to work better that way than on a horizontal position. And there's also, like I said, less of a footprint of the console actually touching things, which prevents it from heating. Now, having said that, if you actually, touch the console itself, it's not reaching anywhere near the temperature that you would have on your PlayStation 4, which is pretty important in my opinion. I just feel like the console has a much better airflow. You don't really hear the fans all that much, particularly if you have any kind of sound like on your headphones, or if you have a TV on or whatever. I feel like you'll never really hear the fans all that much. At least I haven't, with quite a significant amount of hours both in Demon Souls as well as Godfall, and I've never really noticed the fans on the console. And I remember when I did my first Twitch stream with the PlayStation 5, where I was like putting it through its paces, testing a couple of games and whatnot just to see how the system would work, and actually checking out the different system menus and whatnot. There was one point where people were asking me about the fan noise, so I literally put this microphone up to the fan, turned off all kinds of noise gating that I have on the microphone so that I would listen to literally everything. And people said that they could hear me press the buttons on the controller more so than they heard the actual fans. And like the microphone was all the way next to the console, and I was like, I don't know, a good 1.5 meters about away from the console itself, and people were able to hear the button prompts better than the console fans because there's almost no noticeable noise. At least on my unit, I've heard that there's some defective units out there that they make a lot of noise and whatnot. Mine has been working fine so far, and I haven't really had any problems with it. Having said that, if you do put a disc in there, you will hear the disc spin and all of that stuff. That's obvious, but it's not like this huge noise or anything like that. So the PlayStation 5 so far, from my experience, which has been around at this point, I think I got like around the 11th. So it's been about 19 days since I've had this console. and I've never really heard that much noise coming from it. I've had, I think, one game crash, and it was Godfall, which I've mentioned that is not particularly well optimized in my Godfall review, so I think that might be why, but that's the only game crash that I've had so far. And other than that, I haven't really experienced any significant problems with it. Now, naturally, with a console like this, you have better hardware, so a lot of the questions you guys are going to have is, what about my old games, my PS4 games? Because right now, the games that you really have on PlayStation 5, what are they? At least for the ones that are relevant to my audience, you got your Demon Souls, you got your Godfall, even though, like I said, I would recommend you to wait for a discount on the Godfall. You got Miles Morales, which Demon Souls, Miles Morales, awesome. Can't recommend them enough. Really, really good games. Sackboy, personally, I'm not that into 3D platformers. You guys know me. But, you know, I don't really see the Media Molecule messing that up, so it's probably going to be a solid experience as well. And Astrobot, which comes free in the console as well, is pretty fun to give you guys an idea of what the controller is like. So those are kind of like the major games that you have right now for PS5. Soon you're going to have Cyberpunk, even though it's the PS4 version. It will eventually come out with like the enhancements. I don't know the specifics on that. But I believe you can already expect better performance on Cyberpunk, because that was one of the things that I was testing over the last couple of weeks as well, and that is whether or not certain titles can work better even if they came from the PlayStation 4. And one of those games, as you guys obviously know, one of the games that I'm known for, which is Monster Hunter World, I already told you guys all about that in a video where I told you guys that basically that game just runs a lot better on the PlayStation 5. You can actually run it in resolution mode, which gives you 4K. It doesn't have the Ultra HD textures yet that you can get on the PC, but it looks a lot better, and it runs at 60 FPS, which is pretty damn good in my book. So you can already get some benefit from having the PlayStation 5 in certain, and I want to make sure that you understand this. Don't go out there and quote, Rurikhan said, you know, PlayStation 5 runs all PS4 games better. That's not what I said. Certain PS4 games, with the ones that are built with scalability in mind, those games actually run a lot better on PlayStation 5. And why do I say certain? Because one of the games that I know a lot of you guys love here in my audience does not run all that well on PlayStation 5, and I was very disappointed. I was actually surprised initially when I saw the PlayStation Plus collection. You guys will notice that there is an excellent PlayStation 4 exclusive that is missing from that collection. That was something that caught me a little bit off guard. Now, that game is Bloodborne. And I know that a lot of you guys out there are like, Rurikhan, how about Bloodborne? How's Bloodborne? Is Bloodborne good? No. Unfortunately, no. You still get the faster loads if you install Bloodborne onto PlayStation 5, but that game is locked to 30 FPS. It's probably not really built with scalability in mind. As you guys know, From Software does have a strange habit in some cases of locking their animations to the FPS, which is not really something that you should do. They did it with Dark Souls on the PlayStation 3, and it looks like they did it again with Bloodborne for the PlayStation 4. Now, this is just me speculating as to why Bloodborne does not run any better on the PlayStation 5, because I tested other games, like I tested the Dark Souls Remastered, runs great on PS5, but then again, it also runs great on PS4, so it's not really that big of a deal. As a matter of fact, the last episode of Souls in Chat was actually recorded on PlayStation 5. Dark Souls 3 also runs better on PlayStation 5. Sekiro runs friggin' excellent on PlayStation 5, and all of these games you experience significant gains in terms of loading speeds when compared to the PlayStation 4. Now, these are the games that I've used to kind of like test stuff out, because, you know, I know that these are a lot of the games that you guys care about in my channel, because those tend to be the ones that get the most viewership, which is why I instantly installed all those. I haven't installed Dark Souls 2 just yet, but I assume that Dark Souls 2 probably also takes advantage of the improved frame rates, considering that Scholar of the First Sin came after Dark Souls 3, or am I confusing that? See, I don't remember. I should test Dark Souls 2 as well, but we'll leave that for a later video. But anyways, yeah, I've been testing that. So basically, taking a quick overview of all the things we talked about so far. The PlayStation 5 games run great. They load friggin' fantastic. I've had a couple of issues with Godfall, like I said, in terms of performance and whatnot. But, you know, that is the only game that I've had any kind of issues with. Miles Morales runs friggin' fantastic. Demon Souls runs friggin' fantastic. I was a little bit disappointed with the fact that you still have basically like performance modes and cinematic modes, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense. You should just have everything be performance. Like, look, if you can't put ray tracing on it without reducing it to 30 FPS, don't put ray tracing on it. Like, that's my personal thought on it. I really don't like this whole idea that like, oh, but we'll do super max visuals at 30 FPS when you could have done 60. But that's me. I'm a speed freak, whatever. I just like fast frame rates. And I know saying I like fast frame rates in 2020 and saying 60 FPS, all of the PC fan base is going to come in here. It's like, peasants. Because you guys are all running like 144 hertz monitors and whatnot, but not everybody has that kind of money, okay? But anyway, getting back on topic here. So the games run faster, they load faster, whether they're PS5 or PS4. All of that stuff works great. So I guess we can touch up on the controller a little bit, even though I talked significantly about this controller already. Now, one of the things that a lot of people will tell you is that this controller is a bit of a game changer in terms of its haptic feedback systems, as well as the higher precision rumble. And it's definitely something that you instantly notice, but I also feel like it was something that I very instantly got used to. And once I got used to it, it just kind of like felt natural through the use on some games. Some games use it more, some games use it less. I think it's one of those features that I will notice more if I do not have it. I'll be like, oh, this feels different now that I've kind of gotten used to this haptic system when I'm pulling my bows out and when I'm pulling arrows in my bow in Demon Souls, or when I'm playing like a platformer and I feel like not all of the rumble is there, or not all the haptics are there. I think these are some of the things that you'll notice a difference on when they are missing, but you get used to them very quickly because they feel very natural. At least to me, that's been my experience so far. So the controller, in my opinion, is super solid. I mean, I've always kind of liked the DualShock 4. I personally like the symmetrical analog sticks. I know that a lot of people like the asymmetrical sticks more, but personally, I've never had issues with the symmetrical sticks. I've even heard recently from someone that I follow that is like, oh, my thumbs, they knock together, and I'm just like, that doesn't happen to me at all. So I don't know. Maybe it's the way that I use the sticks or whatever. I feel like the control feels great on the hands. I think it definitely feels better than the DualShock 4 because there's a little bit more spacing and stuff just feels like a little bit more natural. But yeah, it's definitely an improvement. And you also have the more precise touchpad. But again, I haven't really seen a lot of games making that much use of the precision that you have in the touchpad right now. Which I hope that more games kind of take advantage of that. I'm not exactly sure how, and I'm not exactly sure how many developers will be willing to do that, because that is one of the features that is only going to really work on the PlayStation 5. So that is something that remains to be seen and is going to be dictated by the market. So overall, from a practical standpoint and from just like using the controller, it's perfectly fine. I like the new features. I think they're great. I don't think they're necessarily, you know, something that's going to revolutionize everything. It is more immersive, which is always a good thing, but I still feel like the best games that will make better use of this are kind of like still yet to come, because I understand why Bluepoint didn't want it to really like go all out on some of these features, because they're trying as hard as they can to preserve the original feel of Demon Souls. So while there is the more precise rumble in certain situations, while there is some haptics here and there on some attacks and some stuff like that, it is not as overwhelming as it is, for instance, in Astrobot, where it's just like, it's happening all the time. If you're playing Astrobot, like the controller is vibrating in all kinds of different ways, giving you different textures for pretty much anything that you're doing. It's very much a showcase of the controller, that game, just like straight up. So that game shows you everything that is possible to do with the controller. Now I still want to see a game that actually uses that stuff to its full potential, and I still haven't gotten it. Like Godfall also uses it a little bit in certain combos, but yeah, Godfall is also not the best example for those features. But yeah, like I said, controller perfectly fine, no issues there. There is one thing though that I gotta point out, and that is the color of the controller. Like we all talked about how the DualSense is a white controller. At least I think this is the only model available right now. I'm sure that eventually there will be more colors, but it being in white is actually a bit of a problem because of the texture that you get in the back. Now, you can't really see too much on it because I clean it on a regular basis, but someone that doesn't clean their controller, this controller, like at least once or twice a week, if you do any kind of long gaming sessions, this thing is a magnet for gamer grime, okay? Because basically, like, it doesn't matter how often you wash your hands or whatever. Like, if you're gaming for a good long while and you're keeping this controller in your hand for like 2-3 hours in a row, you're gonna sweat in your hands. Like that, there's no, like, I don't know if there's somebody out there that has a condition that they don't sweat or they wear gloves when they're playing on their controller. Like, it doesn't matter how clean your hands are, this thing's gonna get some grime. And yeah, it's very noticeable in a white controller. Extremely noticeable even. So make sure you have like some cleaning towels handy, because you're going to be wanting to keep this clean. Otherwise, someone's going to, come into your house or something, even though now with COVID and social distancing and all that. But you imagine that you have a girlfriend over or something. She looks over at your gaming setup. She looks at your controller and it's chock full of gamer grime, right? You don't want that. So just make sure to keep a couple of wipes handy so that you can wipe your controller every now and then. Give it a good clean. I was gonna say good clean scrub, but not really a scrub. Just like clean it up from time to time, and it'll still be fine. But on a black controller, probably wouldn't notice it that much. You could probably go a lot longer without cleaning it. But anyway, that was just something that I noticed there. Now, let's talk about the external storage situation, because like I said, I've heard a lot of conflicting reports when it comes to this, so I really wanted to test it out. So what I did was I went onto Amazon, and during these Black Friday promotions that are going on and whatnot, I bought literally the cheapest SSD that I could find, which was about 100 euros, give or take, which goes to like $110. I don't know the exact exchange rate at this point, but it was from a brand called Crucial, I think, and it was a 1 terabyte SSD. Like I said, the cheapest one they had. Because like if you're gonna have problems, you're usually gonna have problems with cheap hardware, which is actually pretty cool that I got this, because the cable that came with this hard drive actually had a plug that plugs into that smaller port that you have in front of the PlayStation 5, which was very convenient for me, because I was wondering if that port was actually a USB-C port. Yes, it is, and you can just straight up connect the hard drive directly to that port, and it works just fine. Now, a very important thing to keep in mind is if you're someone that keeps your console in rest mode, the PlayStation 5 expects you to like do safe eject whatever from the settings in order for you to actually not have problems with your external hard drive. Because like I plugged it out when I was filming some stuff on the console, and I didn't want to have the wires there. And the console instantly said, you unplugged this thing and I wasn't ready for you to unplug it. So now I'm going to have to like do the repair thing. The repair thing was super fast because like I said, it is an SSD at the end of the day. And here's the thing. I never planned on putting PlayStation 5 games on an external SSD, because if you guys watch the GDC talk, then you will know that the SSD that they have inside the PlayStation 5 is actually some proprietary technology that Sony came up with. I've talked about this significantly, and that is like this super fast storage thing that's directly connected to the motherboard of the console itself, and it's not something that is standard. So the PlayStation 5 games that are PlayStation 5 are going to be taking advantage of that technology, and as such, you can only have them in that hard drive, or until Sony actually has expansion hard drives and whatnot. Now, I had heard that people were having trouble with their PS4 games and that they couldn't copy them over to external hard drives if they were already installed. That was not the case for me at all, because like I downloaded everything onto the main drive of the PlayStation 5. So that was like I said, I tested Sekiro, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, Monster Hunter World, and I just had all of those onto the main drive. And then When I got the SSD, I basically plugged it in and I went into storage settings, just like you would go on your PlayStation 4. Like if you go to storage settings on PlayStation 4, you can do the exact same thing for an external drive, which I had done before. So I just go into the settings and I'm like, okay, put all of this stuff into this external storage drive. And I was able to copy over the PlayStation 4 games, no problem whatsoever. And they still run faster. They don't run as fast as they did on the main drive of the PS5. And like I said, I got the cheapest SSD possible, but they still loaded faster than they did on the PS4, and everything ran just fine. I had no issues whatsoever, and this is after I even unplugged the drive and it was like, you broke everything, and then they did the repair thing and it was just running fine. So you can get an external storage. I would advise you to get external SSD storage because the PlayStation 5 does support that. I don't know what, I think it's USB 3. Yeah, because it's USB-C, obviously. It's USB 3. The PlayStation 5 has USB-C, so you will be able to just straight up get the speed from a lot of these SSD drives. I don't know where diminishing returns are going to come in because I'm not about to go out and buy 5, 6 different storage things to test that out. All I can tell you is that for me, it worked fine. I copied my PS4 games over. It gave me 1 terabyte of space just for PS4 games, which is what I wanted because, you know, that's one of the things that you kind of want on your PS5. You want to have some storage to bring your PS4 games in that you still kind of like want to play. Now, having said that, not everything is super outstanding like we've been talking up until this point. So now I want to bring up some of the things that kind of bothered me with the PlayStation 5. And the first one has to be the hard separation of generations when it comes to games. Now, I know that this is something that Sony has kind of like built their case on for the PS5, which is like we strongly believe in generations and we believe that, you know, we want our console to be different from the PS4 to the PS5. We want it to be a significant technological leap and all that stuff. Yes, I understand that. But it did bother me with, for instance, with Miles Morales, which it's a very minor thing, and they said that they're going to fix it. There might already even be a patch already in the game that fixes this. But basically, you cannot import saves from your PS4 games into the PS5 version of that game. So what does that mean? For instance, I played a significant chunk of Miles Morales on PS4. And then eventually Sony sent me, the PlayStation Portugal sent me the code to Miles Morales on PlayStation 5, and I wasn't able to import my save at all. I had to start from scratch on PlayStation 5. Now, it's not really a big deal, I feel like, in a game like Miles Morales, because I don't think the story is super long. So it's not really, you know, but imagine something like, for instance, Monster Hunter, right? I have like 2,600 hours in that game. I just feel like the way in which they handle that could have been done a little bit better. I feel like it should have been more streamlined, and I should have just been able to get my saves. If I get like the PS5 version of the game, I can just get the save from PS4 into PS5. But no, they're completely split. Like if you go into your save data management, which is in terms of like system menus, the console is pretty much it's the same system menu as on your PS4. So you go to your save data management, and it'll show you PS5 save data, PS4 save data. And these are two separate things. So if you install PS4 games on your PS5, you can go get your PS4 save data the same way that you did back on your PS4. It's not a problem at all. But if you install the PS5 version, then you better hope that the developers themselves have done something that allows you to import your save. Here's another example. As you guys know, I played Devil May Cry 5 on the PlayStation 4. Love that game, highly recommended, friggin' fantastic. Now there's the special edition, which I already made a video of on the channel as well. There's a special edition, and I quite simply wasn't able to bring my save in. I had to start from scratch. As far as I'm aware, there isn't even like a feature that allows you to export your save, because I went and I launched the PS4 version just to test that stuff out, and there was nothing there. So, you know, it's going to always be up to the developers themselves whether or not they're going to allow you to import your save and do that type of stuff, which to me, it doesn't make sense. I feel like this should have been something that should have been done on a console level. And then there's also the fact that there's a little bit of a confusion around the upgrade paths on some of these games. Like, again, this is going to be something that's going to be up to the developers whether or not they want to upgrade their game to a PS5 version, which I think there's no other way to really do it. The developers themselves have to be the ones to decide. But I kind of feel like more people should, you know, embrace this type of stuff and just like if you can, just make like, oh, here's the PS5 version. This is just an update you just download or whatever. Because, for instance, when it comes to Devil May Cry 5, it's not even that old of a game, and you had it on the PS4. And now if you want to get the PS5 version, you're going to have to buy it, basically. As far as I'm aware, there's no upgrade path to get the enhancements that you got on the PlayStation 5 version, which I talked about on my Devil May Cry video. Now, Miles Morales, you're going to get an upgrade, and I believe probably all of this, I would expect all of the Sony first-party titles to get an update, even though that's not... I'm not sure if that's been disclosed yet or what the deal is, but I would expect something like, Ghost of Tsushima to just get like a PS5 version, and that should be something free for anyone that bought Ghost of Tsushima. Same thing for Last of Us 2 and, all of those first-party titles. This is what I would expect, but I'm not sure, because I would also like to see a patch, for instance, for Bloodborne, which is a very important game for me. And it kind of sucks to just load up Bloodborne on PlayStation 5 and see it running at 30 FPS, right? So the confusing upgrade paths in here is something that I feel like potentially Microsoft has handled a little bit better with their smart delivery system, but I cannot confirm this all too much because I don't actually own an Xbox, and I'm probably not going to own an Xbox, so I'm not going to be able to test this stuff out. But I do listen to a lot of like gaming podcasts and whatnot, and people talking about their experience in those podcasts are saying just like, oh, just download the game and boom, it's done, and they immediately apply the patches and do all of that stuff. And on the PS5 thing, on the PS5 side of things, there's a little bit more friction when it comes to this. Now, like I said, all this works flawlessly. So like you get your PS4 games, you put them on your PS5, they work great. The upgrade path is the thing that I feel like there's a little bit of friction there. Some people are doing it better, some people are doing it not as gracefully. So we'll have to see how that all pans out moving forward, because there's not that many examples of this as of yet. You got Miles Morales, and then you got Devil May Cry 5, and I don't actually know of any other titles at this point that have done this, and maybe I've missed a couple of news here and there because it's been some pretty hectic weeks here for me, but that's where the situation is right now. And then just one weird thing that kind of happened to me that I was kind of like taken aback. So you know how you can't use your DualShock 4 to play PlayStation 5 games on your PS5? Like, they don't let you do that. You can, however, use your DualShock 4 to play PlayStation 4 games. So like if you're playing like a multiplayer game that has couch co-op or something like that with a friend, then one of you can use the DualSense, the other one can use the DualShock, and it should work fine. If, however, you're playing a PlayStation 5 game, that's not going to work. So how surprised was I because I've been also testing the remote play feature of the PlayStation 5, which this was something that was already on the PS4, but I just wanted to test it on PS5 to see if it was better, if it was improved at all. And I gotta tell you, in my opinion, the PS5 version works a lot better than it did on PS4. Like, it's still not the same thing as you're actually playing on the unit itself, but like I was able to play Godfall, which is something that requires quite a bit of twitch reflexes and stuff like that, remotely from my house. Which is, I don't know, like 5 kilometers away from the place where my PlayStation 5 is actually at. And I was able to remotely connect to the PlayStation 5, and it worked flawlessly. It was running perfectly fine. Like, you could still tell that it was streamed, and every now and then you would see, a little bit of a frame stutter or something that you would usually get when you watch a video, right? Because ultimately it's still being streamed. But it was much better, and it was much more responsive than it used to be on the PlayStation 4. You could definitely feel the latency. Like, I would not be able to do this and play Monster Hunter World through my PS4 remotely at home. But I was able to play Godfall on the PS5, which was surprising to me. Like, I expected to get home, try to play Godfall and be super disappointed, but no, it worked fine. As a matter of fact, I did that for like over a week, where I was just playing Godfall from home, and it was working just fine, which was, again, very surprising for me, but it is very demanding on your internet connection. So this is one of those cases where your mileage will greatly vary depending on how good your internet connection actually is. And my internet connection at my house is actually pretty good, even though the internet connection at the office is not that great. But still, somewhere along the way, they were able to meet up. I don't know how much Sony has changed in terms of the remote play, but it was working really great. But like I was saying, so you can't use your DualShock 4 to play PlayStation 5 games. But I was able to use the DualShock 4 with remote play to play PlayStation 5 games. It's like when I was playing Godfall, I was playing it on a DualShock 4 and I was running fine. I played Demon Souls on a DualShock 4 through remote play. It was also working fine. There were no problems whatsoever. So like this whole thing that you need the DualSense to play PlayStation 5 games, this is much more of a limitation imposed by them because they want you to use this controller. And of course, you're also going to get new features in certain games and whatnot. But those games would also have run just fine with the DualShock 4. At least most of them, like Demon Souls and Godfall, it would run on DualShock 4, no problem whatsoever, because they do so with remote play. And I understand that me saying this could potentially cause that to be patched out, and I'm sorry, but you know, I just had to report on it. But anyway. Yeah, those are my thoughts on the PlayStation 5 so far. I really like the console. I think it runs great. It's much better improvement from the PS4. So far, like I said, it's been running a lot cooler, and it also loads stuff a lot faster. And you know, you just have better hardware, so you can expect better performance even in older games, so long as those games are built with scalability in mind. So like I said, it's not the case for Bloodborne, unfortunately. But like I said, I believe that they can fix that if they, you know, if they put their mind to it and they actually want to fix it. And I do hope that they come up with a patch for Bloodborne because, you know, that's one of those games that I would very much like to see kind of like immortalized and move forward because it's one of my favorite games. So yeah. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.